I mean, look at their schedule. Week 2 against the Falcons, I think, definitely the Falcons had a good week 1 win against the Carolina Panthers, but I think the Green Bay Packers are winning a close one. I think the Packers are the better team, so now you're 2-0. First, then the next game, week 3, is the first game against is the first game at home for Green Bay, and that's against the Saints. I don't think they lose their first game at home, so now you're 3-0. You got a Thursday Night Football. I got a big upset here for the Packers, and a lot of people might call me crazy for having them win this game, but against the Lions in Lambeau, and after the Week 18 loss they had last year to knock them out of playoff contention. Sunday Night Football, that was a terrible loss for the Packers. It was probably really embarrassing as well, losing to a Lions team that had no hopes for the rest of the season. There was no point for them to win or lose that game, and they wanted to destroy the Packers just because they didn't want to let them win and they'd be in the playoffs because that's their rival. And I think the Packers crowd that night's going to be very loud and might be a little bit hard game for Jared Goff. They're facing Packers have a really underrated defense, a good run game, good pass game with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and their new tight end Luke Musgrave, and you have Aaron Jones and you have A.J. Dillon in the backfield. I think this will be a really good win for the Packers, and they start off 4-0. Call me crazy. But then I have them losing their next 2 games against 2 AFC West teams, against the Raiders. This will be the first game Devontae Adams plays against his former team. This is a Monday Night Football game, and not only that, but it's in Las Vegas. Then after the bye week in Denver, in the altitude, I think that's a loss. I mean, it's a hard. The Denver Broncos have a good defense, and not only that, to be playing in the altitude, I think that will be a win for the Broncos, and they'll be 4-2. But then I have them bouncing back, winning the next 2 games, both at home against the Vikings and the Rams. So now you're 6-2. But then you start to see a little bit of a pattern here. You win some, then you lose some. I have the Packers winning their first 4 games, but then I have them losing their next 2, then I have them winning their next 2. I have them losing their next 4. That's a really hard 4-game stretch here in the month of November and the start of December for it's a really tough start for November for these Green Bay Packers. You start off this is the second game of November, but you have to go play Pittsburgh. I think that's a loss. You welcome the Chargers in. I think that's another loss. Not only that, but then you travel to Detroit on Thanksgiving. I mean, I don't think you're going to beat the Lions both matchups. I think that's a loss. Obviously, you play the Chiefs. That's at home. That's the Sunday Night Football. But I think that's a loss. So now you've lost 4 in a row. You're back to even at 500. You're 6-6. But then the last bit of the schedule starts to get a little easier, and that's where I think it starts to get better for these Green Bay Packers. And then so the New York Giants. I think this is where it starts. You got a Monday Night Football game in New York. I think the Green Bay Packers get an upset against the Giants. You're 7-6. I have them beating the Buccaneers, and now you're 8-6. So you've won the next 2. I think you lose against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. You're 8-7. I mean, then you got New Year's Eve against the Vikings. This is Sunday Night Football. I think that is a win for the Packers. We all know how Kirk Cousins does on primetime. And I think a good defense for the Packers against Kirk Cousins on primetime is not a good matchup for the Vikings. I think the Packers win that game. And then the last game against the Bears, I think the Bears are going to be terrible and they have nothing to play for in Week 7 and Week 18. And then the Packers win. So now the Packers finish off 10-7 with an easy schedule. I mean, besides that, that 4-game stretch or 5-game stretch, you could maybe say with the Giants, where they face the Steelers, the Chargers, the Lions, the Chiefs, and the Giants. I think this is the easy schedule for the Green Bay Packers besides that 5-game stretch where they face Pittsburgh, LA, Detroit, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the New York Giants. The start of the schedule, they already beat the Bears. You got the Falcons, the Saints, the Lions. I know I have them losing the 2 games, but these are obviously 2 games they could possibly win against the Raiders and the Broncos. And then the Vikings and the Rams. Then you have that hard 5-game stretch. But then at the end of the season, the Buccaneers, the Panthers, the Vikings again, and the Bears. Not only is this Green Bay team talented, have a great head coach, and great quarterback in Jordan Love, what we saw from him in Week 1. I mean, he threw 245 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns, and he was out without his number one wide receiver in Christian Watson. Imagine what he'll be like when he gets Christian Watson back, has Romeo Doubs. They have a lot of chemistry. Their tight end Luke Musgrave looks really good in his first game as a rookie. Have a decent offensive line, great defense that they've developed over the years. So I think this Green Bay Packers team is going to surprise a lot of people, and that 10-7 record should be good enough. It won't be good enough to win the division because the Lions are going to win about 11 or 12 games this season, so that will not be good enough to win the division. The Packers will not have the best record in the NFC North, but the Packers at a 10-7 record should be enough to make it to either the 6th or 7th wild card spot. I don't think it'll be better. I don't think they'll be good enough to be that 5th wild card spot at 10-7 because I think the Eagles will most likely win the division in the NFC East. So who's going to be the second best team in that division? It's going to be the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Dallas Cowboys will be the first wild card spot at the 5th seed in the playoffs. I know it's week 2. I know it's hard sometimes to make these predictions, but I think that's what it will look like. Or who knows? Maybe the Cowboys win the division, and the Cowboys win their division, and they're in the top 4 seeds. Then I think if the Cowboys win their division at the NFC East, that means I think the Eagles are the 5th seed. So I think whoever finishes second place in the NFC East, whether that's the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know it's early in the season, I think whoever finishes second in that division will be the 5th seed in the playoffs. But then I think there's a good chance for the Packers at a 10-7 record with their easy schedule, and a talented, loaded roster, that this Green Bay Packers team could be the 6th or 7th seed in the playoffs. I mean, look at two teams that were in the playoffs last year in the wild card, the New York Giants and the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks have a hard schedule. So do the New York Giants. I think it will shock a lot of people when neither one of those teams make the playoffs. And I think another team that made the playoffs this past year that didn't, are the Minnesota Vikings. So I think two new teams that will be in the playoffs this year are the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. And I don't know who the third new team in the playoffs will be, but I do know is that there's going to be multiple. I think there are going to be 4 teams in the NFC in the playoffs that were in it last year that will not be in this year. I think that those teams are the Minnesota Vikings, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Seattle Seahawks, and the New York Giants. I know a lot of people might be upset about those 2 final ones, but both of those teams have very hard schedules. Let's go look at their schedules. So that means there would be a total of 4 new teams in the NFC playoffs. I think you still got the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the 49ers in there. You got the Packers and the Lions. So then there's a chance for 2 new teams that were not in the playoff. Whoever wins the NFC South is going to be that one of the new teams, and then there's going to be another team making the wild card. So I think that's what most likely you're going to see the NFC playoff race come down to. But it's way too early in the season to be focusing on the playoff race down at the end of the season. We'll see how it goes, but I think this Green Bay Packers team is going to shock a lot of people and make the playoffs this year. And I know a lot of people are doubting Jordan Love, but he showed that he's definitely going to be a good quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. I don't know if he's going to be as good as the 2 guys before him in Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, but I think he'll be good enough this year with a good offense around him and a great defense next to him that they'll be good enough to make the playoffs at either 9-8 or 10-7. You guys let me know your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out.